And I want to ask about the housing approach, because the suburban post-war suburban development, so much of that was economically segregated. Forget race for the moment.
That's right.
The housing prices were at this level, you can move in here. If you can't buy in here, but if you go to older communities, even in my own neighborhood, well, down here are the 4 families, then the 2 families, then the single families, and up here on the hill are the mansions. That's pretty common in older areas like Maplewood, University City, and South St. Louis. Right?
Yeah, it is, and certainly in the Botanical Heights neighborhood where we've been working for the last 9 years or so, we've really seen that develop through the new development that's taking place, incorporating the older buildings as well, that we and the developers that have been building in the area, and more recently UIC, a dynamic small development company, really are trying to create that stair step of housing opportunities within a neighborhood. The starter home, the second home, and then a larger new home, such as
and you can stay in the same neighborhood. You don't have to move 50 miles away, right?
And we have new tools or tools that are perhaps new to St. Louis that can help support that. So Beyond Housing has a supporting organization called the 24/1 Community Land Trust. And so the idea of a land trust is that this organization owns the land under houses, so that we just built 30 plus homes in Pine Lawn, homes that might be valued at over $100,000, and folks can buy them for $75,000 to $80,000. So there are tools that we can start deploying around the region to help those housing products become more affordable for families that we know need them.
We're bringing in everybody else here, so feel free to join in. Todd, I wanted to ask you about the very usefulness of the study that you've done. Is this something that, if I'm in a neighborhood that I would like to help see, be turned around, can I look at this and actually use this? Or is everybody different? Every neighborhood is different and you can't apply one to the other.
Well, I think the answer is yes and yes.
Yes and yes.
You need both. I mean, you need to look at the broader dynamics of the region and the city, but every neighborhood is different. And we've now, in the city of St. Louis, we've created this market value analysis. Stephen might be able to say a few words about it, that allows you to look at the neighborhood in pretty micro areas, right? And what you see in parts of St. Louis is tremendous variation. And one of the things we do in community development, we talk about building from strength. Where are the anchors, where are the strength, and build out from that. And that's an effective way to do neighborhood revitalization.
So the market value analysis really takes a cluster of factors in looking at an area from property values and vacancy and building conditions and income. So it's a cluster analysis to sort of do a typology of an area to say this is this kind of area. It's where it fits in the economy, where it fits in the market, and by doing that you can better sort of in a more informed way start to figure out, well, what needs to happen there for that specific, community. This is where it is, so what do you need to do there, instead of just kind of guessing at it.
And the data doesn't tell you what to do. The citizens need to engage with the data. The data is a tool that helps you to think about your place.
Well, and one thing that I was thinking about as I was listening to our conversation is that we're talking about neighborhood revitalization and neighborhood development, and I just sort of want to put out for everyone, which I think is clear, and I just want to make this extra clear, is that even in places that look like there isn't a strong, vibrant neighborhood and community, there still is. People still live there. There's a network. People are getting together at their houses and talking about basketball wives, or whatever people are talking about.
I always tell people that you've got to go to a neighborhood at 7 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. And that's when you see how much life there is, because sometimes in the middle of the day there's nobody there and it looks like there's nothing going on, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm just curious about the hopefulness. You talk about anchors, and I know as I read it, sometimes it's a church or a couple of churches in a neighborhood. And again, some of your neighborhoods were not neighborhoods that were rebounding, but not going down as fast as some of the other neighborhoods. And it's interesting to be able to look at those kinds of factors. What other factors should we be looking at? As let's say as a resident, if I want to stabilize, if I want to keep the neighborhood going, what should we be looking at? Should we be looking at art fairs? Should we be looking at microbreweries? Should we be looking at block organizations?
Clearly beer is doing something right.
Well, that's because you shouldn't sit at home and drink alone.
Well, I think you should look at the citizens and whether they are talking to each other, when they are getting together, because and whether they're telling a story about their place, which is a positive story, not a story of decline. Every communities have to believe in themselves. It has to start from inside the community, and so it's all about the citizens and their ability to engage. And I also think institutions. We have a network of community development corporations, which are grassroots groups that are committed to a geography, that have members of the board from the neighborhood and have members of the board who are experts in the whole process of community development, and those are important too. Institutions are important as well.
In Belleville, Illinois. And it was really disheartening to the people that were involved in it. But we were so intent on doing something that would bring recognition to our community that the whole community actually had the emotional buy-in of the event. And I think one thing that
And you've got to get people to drive, if you want outsiders, to drive away from that interstate and find Belleville, right?
Exactly, because we're competing with, the big box stores. We're more mom and pop. We're competing with the highway. And we really have had to reinvent ourselves. We're a 200-year-old community. This year, a celebration of 250 in St. Louis. And so we really have had to find creative ways to reinvent ourselves. And I think with people feeling a part of a community and getting on the bandwagon with that makes a huge difference in revitalization and economic development.
It makes all the difference. It's the social culture of a neighborhood. There are neighborhoods where the neighbors know each other, and there are neighborhoods where the neighbors don't know each other. And the neighborhoods where they know each other, they're the ones that are on the rebound. I see it all the time. I see people move in and then they leave, and what is the number one reason why they leave? The neighbor didn't come over and say hello. The neighbor didn't bring over a bottle of wine. And the neighborhoods where that's happening are, I think, starting to really see the benefit. They're starting to see the importance of knowing who's next door, and those are where you're seeing where the big shift is happening.
This is such a big picture question. I mean, this is really old-fashioned stuff. This is the way old neighborhoods used to be. And we still have air conditioning, and we don't have porches, although there's a lot of neighborhoods that don't have a lot of air conditioning and do have porches, and they're sitting out there. So you see that. I just wonder if are we just being nostalgic for the old days, or are we actually seeing the old days becoming new days?
I don't think it's just a matter of being nostalgic, and I think that community building is taking new forms. I think the one real remarkable development in recent times has been the community gardening movement. In several of the neighborhoods we work in, the community garden has become really the gathering place for many of the people in the neighborhood where they do get to know each other, and I think that's a really important aspect.
So we're going back to that. The city that plays together will work together, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's true. And an example of some new types of community development are websites like Nextdoor. So these are websites where people have their own social network, essentially, of their residents. And in my neighborhood in University City, I live in Music neighborhood, and we have a Nextdoor, a Stay Tuned site, a Nextdoor site. And probably half of the posts are lost my dog, stray cat, and sometimes we joke about that and their relative value, and I still think they're important because people are getting the opportunity to be recognized, they're getting the opportunity to share things that are important to themselves, and so it's like we're sitting on the front porch, but I'm sitting at a coffee shop and someone's sitting at work, and so that's a new exciting development for us.
Well, I think this is a great point that we tend to, sometimes there's this idea that virtual communities are replacing face-to-face communities. But as you point out, the web can actually be a tool to enhance face-to-face relationships in community, right? And people still crave those face-to-face relationships. You can't develop the kind of trust that you need. You need to look somebody in the face and, see whether they're real or not, and you're not going to develop that online. So neighborhoods are as important as ever, even in an age when you can go online and connect with somebody on the other side of the earth, right? And that's great in its own way, but it's not replacing face-to-face relationships.
Yeah, we'll never lose the sense of physical place. I mean, you're still you still got to live somewhere, right?
I think St. Louis, though, has had an interesting problem. The place is so convenient, and it's so easy to get to where you're going. The neighbors have not had to meet one another the same way that they have to in some of these other cities. That you lock yourself out, or you need to get somewhere. Mom and Dad are on Long Island, and you're in the city. You're talking about hours of driving. In St. Louis, Uncle Bob's is 6 minutes away. So they haven't.
That's a long drive,
So
right.
they haven't. So they're kind of, they come in, and the natives are going, why do I have to know these folks? I have 10 emergency phone calls who could all be here in 5 minutes. And so that's part of what we need to do, is sort of, in certain pockets, we are starting to see that happen, and they need to understand that that is a key component, and so it's not always St. Louisans' fault, but
But sometimes.
sometimes.
And we find in Afton it's a large area, so it's subdivisions that
Right.
seem to get together, and we try to bring them together every year at Afton Day so that they can all get together, watch the parade, come to the festival, that they can meet people from another subdivision, people they went to school with, because it seems like most everybody has some connection to Afton. They went to school there, their parents live there, so it's sort of a come back home and see your neighbors and meet the people that you haven't seen.
Is there an anchor institution or business or
There's
place?
several of the churches that
Yeah.
have been really big anchors. Place-wise, probably the bread company is the newest, latest place where everybody seems to meet.
What I think has been really important for the city of Belleville and also the whole Metro East side of the river is that I think people are beginning to think more regionally. And I think for years, and maybe this was just my point of view from living on the quote other side,
Right.
that people did not think they thought of the Mississippi River as a separation. And now I think people in communities, and maybe a big part of it is the internet and people cooperating with other social services across the river and different organizations. But I think the fact that we are all thinking more regionally has actually improved the whole economy on both sides of the river and development in communities.
It's an interesting point, because we're talking about improving relationships with our neighbors at the same time as we're thinking regionally.
Well, it's sort of like, if we develop the region, are we somehow overlooking neighborhoods? And done right, regional collaboration strengthens neighborhoods because it gives you access to resources. For example, the Great Rivers Greenway and the whole system of trails, which is uniting people. Instead of seeing the rivers, as a divider, they can actually be seen as a uniter, and that just knits the neighborhoods together. So no neighborhood can succeed as an island. No neighborhood is going to succeed if it views itself only as an island. You've got to connect to the resources in the region. You've got to connect to the
I'm
jobs.
fascinated by the Twitter comment we got, though, that, and I passed it on, that the sense was you guys are talking about these isolated things when we all know that St. Louis is just in total decline and the urban areas are empty and gone. That's how people see things.
They haven't been there then.
Well, no, I know, but I mean, that's the attitude, and I don't know where
But that's okay. Embrace that. Don't sell. We're not New York. We're not Chicago. We're not. That's okay. That's okay. Flip it on its head and say, and I think that's the problem. We're trying
go
to
buy
say
5 acres
we're trying to
from,
say
Paul
Washington
McGee, right?
Avenue is Chicago, and it's not. But it's the beginning of something, and you can participate and see the impact you make in that.
Yeah.
And if you sell it that way, I don't think you'll get the same resistance.
And I think that's one of the beauties of St. Louis is that there's so much there to discover. You have to go there and look, and you will find great things. And if
not in your
someone
face, right?
someone who chooses to isolate will only see the negative, or will only get perhaps some kind of a message that's coming in from the media. But to go out on the street and to connect with people and to be part of meetup groups and neighbor groups, there's a lot of great stuff out there.
And actually we're wrapping this up because we're actually online at this point. But I think the point about the bread company is an interesting point, just like microbreweries. I think bread companies have created community centers. And we think about it as a business, and they're open there and they're open there. But That's where I get some ideas for my stories, from the bed company.
Someone I know.
It used
Yes,
to be,
exactly.
It used to be the neighborhood tavern served that function in communities. It's where people,
Take their bucket and go get their bucket
Right.
of beer.
And if we can bring the beer gardens back, we're there.
now it's bread company,
Right.
I think it's a little broader. I mean, it's just important to have businesses that you're proud of in your neighborhood. That's
Yeah.
what generates
That is right.
conversation. Sometimes that's how it gets the neighbors talking. This new restaurant that opened up down the street, if that's, that can generate a lot of buzz, and that's what can connect people and make people talk about it. And it's, it's all kinds of artists and producers, bakeries, donut shops, whatever it is. But breweries got a lot of focus on this program. But it's all about just having businesses that you're proud of.